What's up, guys, and welcome to the Sophisticated Neanderthal channel here on YouTube. If it's your first time here, I appreciate it. If you've watched some of my other videos, I appreciate you coming back. And if you're a subscriber or you've hit that thumbs up or thumbs down button, welcome back. Good to see you again. I wanted to take a minute today to do a video about one of my favorite watches, and I know I'm going to see in the comments every watch is my favorite watch. I say it in every video, but this truly is one of my favorite watches and might be one of the most underrated watches of all time. And I'm talking about the Tudor Pelagos. I'm going to be reviewing my Tudor Pelagos. I've had it for several years, and it really is a great watch. It can be worn as a luxury watch. I tend to wear it as a beater watch. I took it off of the titanium bracelet and put it on the rubber band. It's one of the few watches I wear on rubber. But I want to do a quick video about it. I've had a couple comments asking me about the Pelagos, and so I thought I'd just do a quick video about it. Before we get started, watch check. Yes, guys, I am wearing the Apple Watch Series 3. I've started wearing my Apple Watch a lot more than any other watch these days. Not great for my viewers who are really into horology, but it's just so convenient to wear. But stick around and let's talk about this bad boy. All right, everybody, so we're back here. I got my glasses on because I've got my notes sitting over here. And just wanted to talk a little bit about the Pelagos. And I want to talk about, first, the difference between the older Pelagos, the 2824 ETA version, versus the new in-house MT 5612 movement. A couple of the differences between the two. The older ETA movement is the one that I'll be reviewing because I've had it for probably going on 6 or 7 years now. Back then, Tudor would take it off the shelf, what was it, the 2824 ETA, and they would spec it out for Tudor. Of course, now with the in-house movement, it's made by Tudor, aka Rolex. I have found in handling the two, I've never owned the in-house movement, but in handling the two and just kind of my research has shown that, in my opinion, there's not much of an advantage in buying the in-house movement over the ETA unless you're someone who's just an in-house movement snob. I don't mean that in a bad way. That's kind of what we call people who are real big on in-house movements when we talk about watches. Not meant to be derogatory. It's meant to kind of talk about somebody who really likes the refined idea of having an in-house movement in their watch. The main differences are just two things: the movement and the dial. Everything else is pretty much the same. The dial on the ETA, if you look online or do any research on it, you'll see it'll either be called an ETA or a two-liner. If you see the phrase two-liner, what that means is that, and you'll see it when we get the close-up of the watch, there are just two lines of text at the 6 o'clock on the dial. The ETA has more writing on the dial, more like a Rolex Submariner. And some people like it, some people don't. I don't prefer either one. I think they both look great on this watch. But I'll be reviewing the ETA, and when there are differences, I will point them out when we're looking at the close-up of the watch. Let's check it out. All right, so here we have the Tudor Pelagos. As you see, I have it on the rubber strap, but I've also set the titanium bracelet here too, and I will talk about the bracelet in much more detail later. It's a great bracelet. I just love the way this watch looks on rubber. Plus, one of the downsides to the bracelet we'll talk about is because it is titanium, it is kind of a scratch magnet. We'll talk about that later. Let's set that aside. So if we talk about the specs of this watch, first and foremost, it's a 42 millimeter diameter case. It's 50 millimeters from lug to lug. Not too big, not too small. It's actually a great size. It is 14.3 millimeters thick, and it does have a helium escape valve. This watch is certified diving down to 500 meters, so 99% of us will never need that. However, it's there nonetheless. This, of course, is the ETA version, and you'll hear this called online the two-liner, and that's because it has the 2 lines of text above the 6 o'clock marker. It says rotor self-winding, 500 meters, 1,640 feet. Of course, if you get the newer in-house movement version, there's more text down on the bottom, as you can see from the photo here. I kind of like the simplicity of the ETA version. But let's go around the dial first. As you can see, of course, at the bottom we talked about, we've got the 2 lines of text. At the top we have the Tudor Shield logo, and it says Geneva underneath it. The applied markers not only are very easy to see in the day, this watch has the best lume of any watch I've ever owned, and even exceeding the Seiko dive watches. The lume on this is ridiculous. But the applied markers are beautifully inlaid. You can probably see the chapter ring is slanted down with the marks on it for each second or minute. And then it's cut out where these markers then are applied. And it's just beautifully done, beautifully done. Of course, down at the bottom we see it says Swiss made. The bezel on this watch is a coated aluminum bezel. It almost has a rubbery or matte look to it. I have banged this watch around. You'll probably see somewhere around the 4 o'clock marker I do have a little bit of scratch on the sapphire crystal. I think that is probably from desk diving. But I've banged this watch around quite a bit and it has held up great. I just have that one little mark down there around the 3 o'clock marker on the sapphire. The way they have done the bezel insert is just beautiful. The matte along with the markers from 12 to 15 for dive purposes, and then the numbers like you would see on a Submariner with the marks for each 5-minute increment. The great thing about this bezel is it is fully lumed. Anything on this bezel you see that is white will be fully lumed at night. Just beautiful, just beautiful. One of the really nice things about this watch, I think that makes it look nice and makes it very light and durable in one sense, but does have one drawback, is that the case and the bracelet are both made out of titanium. And while this is a fairly chunky watch, it wears really light because it is titanium. The one downside to the titanium, and I don't really have any evidence of it on the case, is that the titanium does scratch quite easily, and you'll see that when we get to the bracelet. Of course, when we look at the hands, it has the classic Tudor snowflake hands that are unmistakable if you are a watch connoisseur or do a lot of research on watches. The snowflake hands on the Pelagos are iconic, and again, because of their size and the lume on this watch, it's just an amazing watch if you need to look at your time or your indices at night. So when we take a look over here at the crown, it has a nice sized crown. You can see some of those scratches I was talking about there on the side of the case. And that's just going to be something that if you get this watch, you're going to have to understand and be comfortable with. You're going to get some scratches because of the titanium. But a nice large crown, nice crown guards. The crown has a little bit of a darker color on the serrations where you turn it. In the crown, of course, as you would imagine from a Tudor or a Rolex watch, works beautifully. We talked about it a little bit before. It does have the helium escape valve, and of course it says gas escape valve around the side there. And that's a nice feature if you are going to be diving at deeper depths, or if you are a professional commercial diver, this watch will be great for you. We have the standard case back screw down with 3 Tudor shields, and it says Tudor, Geneva, Swiss on the bottom. You can see I've scratched the heck out of the case back there where the pins go in to hold the rubber strap. Until you figure out how to easily change the bands on this watch, it is a pain in the rear end to get off. The main reason is that when you first try to take this band off, you may think, okay, you're going to want to squeeze in and pull out, or squeeze in and pull back. But actually this watch, when you get your spring bars pushed in, you push straight down towards the face of the watch, or here towards the table, and it comes out easily, and it took me forever to figure that out. In any event, once you figure it out, it's easy to do. So one of the things I really like about this watch is that Tudor includes both the titanium bracelet and the rubber strap. And both are great. Again, let's talk about the rubber strap here quickly. First, I love this rubber strap. This is a vulcanized rubber strap. You can see it's got a little bit of texture here. That helps it hold onto your wrist very well. This rubber is a vulcanized, harder rubber. It is not a silicone rubber. It is not extremely flexible. It's flexible enough. But as I said, I've beat this watch up, and this band is just amazing and stood the test of time. The clasp on the rubber is really nice. I think it's pretty cool that on the titanium buckle, they've included the Tudor shield design there. Otherwise, it's pretty much your standard Tang buckle. Of course, on the back, it's got your Tudor branding there on the bracelet, or excuse me, the rubber strap as well. And it's a fairly long strap, and you have a ton of adjustability, as you can see. So in terms of the overall aesthetics of the watch, I think it's just really good. I want to talk about the movement for a minute. The movement on this watch is an off-the-shelf, originally off-the-shelf ETA 2824. Of course, 3 hands. You've got your hour, your minute, your second, with the date window at the 3 o'clock position. I really like the way Tudor did the date window. It is recessed, it's beveled there on the dial, and of course, with the white background and the black numerals there, it's really easy to see and to read. In terms of the movement though, the ETA 2824, when Tudor made these watches, the ETA or 2-line versions, it worked out really well. They did modify the ETA. It is not cost certified. The newer in-house movement is cost certified, but you're going to pay anywhere from $300 to $700 more to get the in-house version. You can still find the 2-line or ETA versions new from some great dealers, and you can get some really good deals on them. I have not once thought about upgrading this to the in-house movement version because Tudor did modify the ETA, and this thing has run like +4, -2 a day for a number of years now. This is one of my watches that I do keep on a winder at all times, just to make sure that it's always properly wound and hardly ever stops. Pluses and minuses to both. Some people say, well, leaving it on the winder will cause the mechanism to wear out more quickly. Well, not really. If you service them like you should, you'll be fine. Similarly, if this is a watch, let's say you wear on the weekends, but you're not going to wear it daily, if you were to let it sit and let the power reserve run down, as long as you're getting your watch serviced at proper intervals, that's not going to harm the watch either. So let's take a look at the titanium strap bracelet here for a minute. Tudor has done a great job with this bracelet. Again, you will see on the 6 o'clock end of mine, I do have a lot of scratches. I tend to wear the bracelets on my watches just there above 6 o'clock. It seems to be where I hit all of my watches. And the titanium will scratch up. There is no doubt about it. But let's talk about the buckle really quickly. First, like I said, I think Tudor's done a really, get it here in focus, Tudor's done a really good job with this bracelet. It is stamped titanium, has, let's turn it around here. Of course, it has the Tudor signing there engraved. On the other side, it's just matte titanium. It has a really good clasp and fold over safety lock. Again, I think it's pretty cool that Tudor here incorporated the bottom half of the Tudor logo. In fact, the whole Tudor logo in terms of the safety clasp. Now, the best thing about this bracelet is the way Tudor has used what I'll call the glide lock system. If you have a Rolex Submariner, or if you've handled a Rolex Submariner, you know that the glide lock on there is one of the best features. You can change your watch throughout the day, the sizing of your watch throughout the day, to make it easier to wear and fit your wrist more comfortably. And the way Tudor did it here is you have 3 micro adjustments, and you get to those by just pushing down the band, and you can slide those to any of those 3. You can use Tudor's spring system here, and you'll see it has 6 locations. Now, those locations really don't mean anything because they do not lock. It's on a spring system. So if your wrist expands or contracts throughout the day, or if you want to put this on over a wetsuit, you'll see it's just a spring-loaded system. Here are the springs back here, and as you expand your wrist, the springs get larger, and as it gets smaller, it goes back. So Tudor did a really good job in terms of designing this bracelet. The bracelet itself is very light because it is titanium. It is very comfortable to wear. The matte finishing on the back just feels really good against the skin. The clasp sits very comfortably on the wrist. So Tudor did a great job in terms of designing this bracelet and the clasp. Finally, one of the things about the Tudor brand that I think is a bit of a myth that is being dispelled, especially in the last couple of years. There used to be a bit of a stigma that a Tudor was a, quote, poor man's Rolex. And what I found is that Tudor, Rolex is allowing Tudor to do things with their watches that Rolex on their flagship watches won't do. Rolex tends to be extremely conservative. So when we talk about the matte coating on the bezel, when we talk about looming the bezel insert, when we talk about making a watch out of titanium, those are all things that Rolex doesn't do and probably won't do, but they allow their little brother Tudor to do. And I think that really adds a whole new segment to the market. And I think it's been wise for Rolex to go that route in terms of their Tudor watches. A lot of times you used to hear the phrase, well, you're wearing a Tudor Pelagos because you can't afford a Submariner. That may be true in some cases. Personally, I've owned several Submariners, 5 or 6 over the years. Those have all been sold, and this has remained in my collection. And the main reason is I prefer the Pelagos over the Submariner when we talk about dollar for dollar comparison of the two. I don't really think there are many more refinements to the Rolex that you don't get here on the Tudor. One thing I wanted to mention also is the coin edge, the machined coin edge around the bezel on the Pelagos is just, I mean, it is amazing. It just does such a good job. I mean, a lot of times if I'm using one of my Submariners, or when I used to have my Submariners, if I had gloves on, it was so hard for me to turn the bezel. This bezel just turns beautifully. It's easy to grasp with that machined coin edge, even with gloves on. And you get a very tactile feel and sound. You know exactly when you're turning it, where you're turning it. And of course it is unidirectional. It's not going to turn back on you if you're using it for diving purposes. So in any event, that's a real quick review of the Tudor Pelagos. I would tell you, if one of the questions I had in the comments of one of my prior videos was, someone was talking about comparing the Tudor Pelagos with the Breitling Super Ocean 242 and the Omega Seamaster 300. And I said my order of preference, having owning all 3 of these, is I put Tudor at the #1 spot for a lot of reasons. I like the aesthetics. I think it's a superior watch. And then I would put the Omega Seamaster 300 in the #2 position, and the Breitling Super Ocean 242 in the 3rd position, although any of the 3 would be great purchases for anyone. If you've got any questions about the Pelagos or anything about it, just leave a comment down in the comment section. I'll get back to you. And let's take it back to the office to finalize this video. All right, peeps. Well, I hope you enjoyed that review. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know what you think. Got a new look to the channel, some new artwork. I'm going to be expanding, talking a little bit more about tech as well as still talking about watches and beard care, of course. Yeah, subscribe. Check out some of my videos. I appreciate it. Thanks.